Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Benson. I'm with the Mission Viejo Chamber of Commerce, and I am the co-chair of the Community and Legislative Affairs Committee. I'd like to welcome all of you to our meeting today. I wanted to introduce you to my other co-chair, Michael Leonard, and our committee folks. We have Jim Leach and Bob Stewart, as well as our chamber CEO, Doug Zelasco. So welcome everybody and thank you for joining us today. We got a great program for you lined up today. There have been some legislative updates pertaining to what can go in your different types of trash cans. And we've got a great speaker in Ashley from Waste Management. And I don't see Ashley yet. There she is. Ashley, are you ready to go today? I guess she's getting set up here in just a minute.
Hopefully now you can hear me. Hey, Dave. Ashley, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Hopefully no technological difficulties on my end today.
Oh, great. You're up. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. All right. Well, if anything else, I can go ahead and start on my end.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to flip you guys around. I'm just going to share my screens really quick. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. Can everyone see my screen okay? Dave, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And you can see my screen?
We can see your screen, Ashley.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I was having some audio issues. Okay, perfect. So I will go ahead and start. Again, so I'm Ashley. I work for Waste Management. I'm the Recycling Education and Outreach Manager, specifically designated to the city of Mission Viejo. So I know a lot of the business owners already, as well as the multi-family property managers, and even a lot of residents as well. I also do a lot of community events. So I like to be an active resource to the community, and today I just wanted to go over just a lot of the laws, so hopefully it's not too overwhelming for you, because I know there is a lot. But we can go through them, and at the end, if there's any questions, or even afterwards, I'm happy to provide my contact info, and we can always discuss them further. So pretty quickly, just to start off, let's see here.
Ashley?
Yes?
This is Doug Zelasco. I don't know if anyone else is having some difficulties hearing you, but you're coming through a little muffled. So you might want to speak up a little bit so we can hear. I don't know, I may be the only person having difficulty, but I have earphones in and I'm having a little trouble.
Okay, let me see. Does this make it better?
A little bit, yes.
A little bit, okay. I will. Let me see. Unfortunately, I don't have the best microphone. That could be the issue. Let me try a different way really quick.
By the way, while Ashley is getting set up, if any of you have questions for her, please go to the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and type in your questions. And at the end of Ashley's presentation, we'll have some time for your questions.
One other thing I'd like to add is this is being recorded. So if you have any friends or business associates that can't join us today, it will be available to you. The presentation will be available on YouTube by the end of the day tomorrow, Friday.
Okay, can you hear me a little bit better, maybe?
Yeah, it's coming in a little clear.
Okay, I hope so. Will this be okay for the rest of the video?
Yes.
Okay, Hopefully so, and if not, I'm so sorry. I will definitely invest in better technology on my end for the future. Okay, so just to start off, I just wanted to go over just a pretty fun fact for the county of Orange specifically. About 4 to 4.5 million tons per year are disposed in our Orange County landfills. And for those of you where it's difficult to visualize so much, right? Picture the Angels Stadium filled up about 5 times all the way to the top. Or you're a hockey fan, the center 7 times, right? So this is just a fact that'll help us kind of understand, why many of these laws have come into play. Really, the state of California has always been environmentally progressive. They're really trying to get as little as waste as possible from going into the landfills because they do fill up fast, and a lot of the waste types that do go to the landfills have harsh effects on the environment. So to start off, we'll start off with the very first law that came into effect. I'm going to go kind of in order of when they went into effect. I know here some of them may have been passed before one another, but just to make it simpler, we'll just go in the order of when they will be in effect and when residents and members of the community will see these in play. So just a quick little history, AB 939, it's been around, it's been around since 1989, so it's not new at all, but it will help us understand why some of these other laws have come into play because it really does build off of this law right here. And this law was really the legislation that changed California's waste industry. I think a lot of us might remember, back in the day, we had, 2 trash drivers. They would come in, pick up your 1 bin or maybe 2 and just take it to the landfill, right? It was a long time ago, but this law required all cities to now divert 50% of the waste they generate in their city to beneficial reuse or recycling or any other methods. So that's where this 3-cart system comes into play. That's why you have 3 carts at your home. We have a trash cart, your recycling cart, and your green waste cart. And this allows for us to take some commodities out of that trash cart. Recyclables will go to our recycling centers, and green waste for ADC or composting. And this is kind of just generally where our Orange County customers' waste is taken for recycling. This location is in Orange off of Quasell Street. It's our materials recovery facility, which basically sorts all of the recyclables that we collect. Basically, it does about 100,000 tons of single stream materials annually. It was opened in 2012, so it's still fairly new. And we do tours as well. So if any community members are ever interested in doing something like that, I know with COVID-19 restrictions, unfortunately, we're not doing that right now. But hopefully we'll be back up soon and to have guests and explain a little bit more. It's a really cool facility. There's just lots of conveyor belts going every which way, and it's pretty interesting to see how this gets sorted after it's picked up. So now we're getting into a little bit more recent legislation. Basically, if you're a business owner, you may or may not have gotten a notice from the city that you're in about AB 341. This one is just the mandatory commercial recycling law. So it was adopted in 2012, and it basically requires any business that generates over 4 cubic yards of solid waste per week to have a recycling program. This also includes multifamily apartment complexes of 5 units or more in the state. What does that look like? It's really, if you see a 3, behind businesses, you'll see those waste bins. They're a lot bigger. They're not little carts, but they're bins. And usually those are about 3 cubic yards. That's our standard size. Now, if you have a 3 cubic yard bin being serviced twice a week, let's say Mondays and Thursdays, that puts you at 6 cubic yards of solid waste being picked up a week. So that would put your business at the threshold for needing a recycling program in place. Why was the commercial sector chosen to be the first one to kind of have this mandate? Well, the commercial sector generates about 75% of solid waste in California, and it is pretty shocking to see how much of that material is, cardboard or recyclables and things like that. I've gone to many businesses in Mission Viejo that have looked They said, well, I don't know if I have recycling, and we'll walk back and I'll look at their trash bin and it is filled up only with cardboard. And we basically are able to switch their trash bin with a cardboard or a recycling bin. And it actually will, in Mission Viejo, it'll save you money because the recycling rates are 50% the cost of the trash rates. So there is potential cost savings here in the city as well for that. And I put on the left just a little picture of what are the most common recyclable items that we accept, and mostly what's a really good rule to remember. This here is just, plastic bottles and containers, especially those with number 1s and number 2s. Food and beverage cans, aluminum, tin, any type of paper material that you might generate, office paper, or junk mail, things like that, or cardboard, of course, like cereal boxes or Amazon boxes, anything, and of course, glass bottles and jars. Now, the recycling market has kind of had a huge change, so I'll briefly go through that because I know it's been in the news, and a lot of people have asked me, well, what does that mean? Are we still recycling? And the answer is yes, but I'll go ahead and explain kind of what that change was. And it really has to do with China. China basically used to be the largest importer of recyclables in the world. That was until in 2017, their Ministry of Environmental Protection announced that they were going to ban 24 recyclable commodities, including unsorted mixed paper and mixed plastics, effective January 1st, 2018. This is a really, really big number. In addition, they also reduced their contamination threshold to less than 0.5%. So for every bale of cardboard or for every bale of, aluminum cans, imagine a tennis shoe being in that bale. That would already put the bale over the threshold of contamination. And if you send a whole load over to China like that, they can turn it completely around. And that is a huge cost and obviously a huge environmental impact that was wasted. So it's really, really important now to basically reduce the contamination. Like I said, it was, we were sending about 95% of plastics to China as well as Europe, and about $5.6 billion in scrap commodities. What it means now is less than 2% of mixed paper goes to China, and we've had to reduce our line speed at the MRF. So if you go to our materials recovery facility and you see all these conveyor belts, they've had to be slowed at a drastic rate so that we can pick through the materials better and reduce that contamination, as well as hire more people, right, to make sure we have more people picking through it and getting the right items to go into the bales. Now, this also has other effects as well. I mean, especially in California, we have other laws that also contribute to this, such as, even labor wages, right? With labor wages going up and you have to hire more people and slow things down, this causes a higher supply of recyclables sitting there. It definitely has its effect on operating costs, which make the rates a little bit more difficult to maintain at a low level as before. In addition, anytime now that China has closed its doors, anytime there's a high supply of recyclables and now low demand, that causes the value of the commodity to plummet. So we've seen a lot of effects. I think a lot of us remember when the CRV centers in Mission Viejo kind of announced they were shutting its doors, and a lot of people asked why. Well, really, it was just their operating costs were extremely high, and the value they were getting for the material was really low, and it wasn't sustainable. So it does have effects on other markets as well. We still do have CRV centers. They do, I believe, the next generation recycling on the Crown Valley, next to the Crown Valley Market in Mission Viejo is still open. And of course, waste management will still collect your recyclables and make sure it's recycled. And we also have a recycling center at our waste management facility in Irvine. So if anyone wants to go down there, you are welcome. I think it'll be opening soon, if not already, actually. I have to double check with everything opening back up. So definitely, with the times, we have to make sure everything's open again these days. Now, the good thing is waste management did see this coming. It wasn't like China announced this and it was a huge surprise to many, but we were investing already in a lot. So in 2019, we're proud to say that we've had over 77% of our recyclables now recycled domestically. So we've had a huge increase in domestic partnerships and domestic outlets. Waste Management has also invested over $100 million in annual capital investments in our MRFs over the past 2 years. This is with new technology such as optical sorters, advanced screening technology, and robotics. Really, the goal is to maximize the recyclable quality and minimize the operating costs in order to keep the costs for our customers down. So the better the inbound quality, the better the recyclables are, and the cleaner they are when we pick them up, the lower the costs. So that is a little bit about the recycling market, but to answer everyone's question, yes, recyclables still get recycled even despite China's ban. There's still other outlets, and we are using them. We just had a little bit of change in the way it was done, right? So now we're going to AB 1826, which is just the mandatory commercial organics recycling law. So now we're getting into organics recycling. This is a little bit different than your regular recycling, right? This was signed in 2014, and basically it just requires businesses, and again, multifamilies of properties with 5 units or more to recycle their organic waste, depending on the amount that they generate. So basically for businesses, organic waste just means food scraps and yard trimmings. And for multifamilies, they only need to worry about green waste. So no food waste just yet, just green waste. And basically the state just split it up into 3 tiers. April 1st was the first tier, January 1st was the second tier, and now we are all in the 3rd tier. As of January 1st, 2019, anyone generating 4 or more cubic yards of solid waste, meaning just trash or recycling or anything, they must arrange for an organics recycling program, as long as they, of course, generate organics. If you're a muffler shop and you don't have any food waste or green waste or anything like that, there are some caveats as well in order to get you out of that, but generally that is the rule. And this is just like a brief description. I mean, it doesn't look brief, but of what food scraps and what green waste are. I mean, food scraps can really be anything like dairy, meat, flowers, herbs. It can be even food spilt paper, napkins, paper plates, pizza boxes. And then the green waste, of course, just, yard trimmings, grass, clippings from trees, shrubs, things like that. Now, the state basically, again, did this because they're trying to keep this material out of the landfill. Organics has, when it goes to the landfill, it generates a really powerful greenhouse gas called methane. Methane does, contribute to climate change. It's a lot more powerful, actually, than carbon dioxide. So they're trying to reduce this from being in the landfill. It does take up a lot of the landfill already. And that was really the goal of the state when they passed this law. We basically, as Waste Management, I put a brief little picture, which we can go over another time, but this is just what happens to your food waste when we pick it up from your commercial business. We take it to our core, again, here in Orange, California, off of LaSalle. The core is able to take that food waste, to remove it from, any contaminants. So I can show you actually a picture. It's not a beautiful process, but it's really amazing. That is kind of how it looks when we get it, and you'll see a lot of plastic bags and forks and spoons that accidentally got in there, and that's on the right how it got removed from this machine that's able to spin it away. Essentially, they just turn it into a smoothie of some sorts, which I don't think any of us would want to drink, but it's that's what it looks like. And we take it to the water sanitation district where they put it in their anaerobic digesters, and the microbes love it. They love it so much they produce actually 112% more methane than normal when that. But this methane is good because, as you can see, it's in a closed system, so they're able to capture it and then they can burn it off and use it to power the grid. So it's a renewable energy method. So now we're getting into some laws that really took effect this year, and moving forward is what we're going to see in the future. AB 1594 did take effect in California. Even though it was passed in 2014, it became effective January 1st. This law just states that the use of green material for ADC does not constitute diversion through recycling, and it will be considered disposal. Now, what is ADC? ADC is just the green waste material that we pick up. It is used by landfill operators to cover the trash at the end of the day. And this was considered beneficial reuse because it controlled vectors, fires, odors, litter from blowing, and scavenging of some sorts. So, prior to this law taking effect, we would, collect the green waste, lightly process it, take it to the landfill, and it was used as ADC. But now, and then since it was considered beneficial reuse, the county was also able to take it for free because it benefited them, and it was considered diversion. So they did not have to charge it as disposal. But then this law came effect and it changes things. And another huge change from this is that now that it's not considered diversion, if you remember from the beginning, AB 939 is still in effect, and it does require cities to meet that 50% diversion mark every year. So if green waste as ADC no longer counts as diversion, that's a huge hit because green waste makes up a lot of that 50%. And there are penalties in place for not making that 50% mark. So it is something that was a huge change, and the cities have had to look at what they're going to now do with that green waste to be compliant with AB 939. And even if they did take it to the landfill in Orange County, you would still be charged now for it because now they would be charging it to be disposed. So the rates, unfortunately, would have to go up either way, whatever is done. The city of Mission Viejo specifically negotiated with Waste Management to ensure that the yard waste is composted locally here in Irvine. Unfortunately, the residential rate did have to increase by $2.24, and this was to cover the process of composting and diverting the material in this manner. The city did compare this rate to other cities in Orange County, including those with an AB 1594 program. And even out of the 34 cities in the county, Mission Viejo's rate is still lower than 24 of the cities. And then of the 9 cities with lower rates, 4 were still scheduled to have a rate increase that would end up being higher. So the good news is, even though Mission Viejo's rates went up, we are still one of the lowest rates in Orange County. All right, we're getting a little bit closer to the end here, but AB 827 is a law that's coming up actually really, really soon. So July 1st, next month. This was passed in 2019, and it basically requires all of those restaurants that are also under the law for 341 in 1826. So if you're generating that 4 cubic yard of waste each week, that's the threshold. Basically, certain restaurants who do that have to have these little containers essentially available to their guests. Now, this is, to be clear, this is not like Chili's or a sit-down restaurant, right? Those sit-down restaurants, they bus for you, so they take care of their waste. This is more for like fast casual restaurants, coffee shops, like, like Chipotle or Panda, where you kind of bus yourself and you throw your trash away. It's essentially ensuring that guests have the option to sort their material and be able to compost and be able to recycle and be able to put the right products in the trash. And it's just to ensure compliance. It's, again, another caveat from the laws that were already created before. So it's kind of just an extension of it. I have got a lot of questions. I know the city did send some letters out about this. So if anyone has questions at the end, we can definitely talk, and I can give you my contact info as well. Now, the biggest law I kind of saved for the end, because this one is, it's a really, really big change, and it's going to be definitely a lot more coming. To be honest, it can have its own presentation, but we'll go ahead and talk about it now. Senate Bill 1383 is a law that was passed in 2016 by Governor Jerry Brown, but it's going to be taking effect in January 2022. So I know this is a little bit away from now, but it is coming, and it is a really big change in our waste industry. A very big change, just like how AB 939 was a really big change back then. People were not used to putting their recyclables in recycling cans and having 3 containers. This one is also big in the sense that it now requires residents to also recycle their organic waste, which includes food waste. So before I kind of go into it, it's just really, these are some of the mandates that also come with it. There is a 20% increase in edible food recovery by January 2025. It also standardizes the cart colors throughout the entire state of California. So even if you move to a different city, those cart colors will still mean the same thing. So the cart colors that have been kind of solidified so far are black or gray for your trash, blue for your recycling, and then green for your green waste / food waste. And if you're in an area or your commercial business that's just using food waste, that color is brown. But for commingled green waste and food waste, which is really what the city of Mission Viejo is looking at, keeping those 3 carts, that's kind of what we're looking at right here. There is really aggressive educational outreach requirements, and that is, to the benefit of the residents to make sure that they fully understand the program, they are able to be compliant, and they are able to have access to resources, because there are strict contamination thresholds, and there will be penalties, unfortunately, for not following the programs eventually. So that's going to be a big change for a lot of people, but we're all in it together. The whole state will be doing it, so we'll work through this. These are just some slides from Cal Recycle themselves explaining a little bit more of what to expect and kind of why. Again, organic waste has always been a huge concern in the state. About 27 million tons were disposed of in 2017, and that's kind of a number that's been remaining. Food itself makes up about 18%, and we throw about 6 million tons of food waste away every year. The edible recovery portion of the law kind of was inspired by how many people are food insecure in the state. So about 1 in 8 Californians say that they are food insecure, and 1 in 5 children. So having that edible food recovery portion to really large vendors, there will be a portion of please donate your food to these sources, and each city will be expected to have a list of what are the edible recovery resources, right? These are kind of the timelines of what we're looking at, and actually the next slide tells it a little bit better. So again, in January 2022, that's when we expect these regulations to start to take effect. And then in January 2024, that's really when enforcement begins. So at that point, if we still have a lot of non-compliance, there's gonna be enforcement actions to make sure that our programs are a lot more successful. And then in January 2025, we're looking at that goal for 20% increase in edible food recovery and 75% reduction in organics disposal in our landfill. So again, I know this is going to be a really big change, but Waste Management's currently finalizing the contract with the city of Mission Viejo, and there's going to be a lot more information available as we get closer. We're definitely going to have, we have a huge plan as far as outreach, and lots of social media, lots of flyers, lots of mailers, lots of labels. And one thing that we will be doing is giving each resident a little compost pail, as you see, and each resident will be able to store their food waste in that container, either under their kitchen sink or in their fridge, wherever it's easier for them. I had the pleasure of visiting my aunt in Canada this year, and she actually has been doing this for a long time, because Toronto basically switched to this process. I can't remember what year, but she's been doing it for a while. And since she lives alone, she actually stores her food waste in a bag in her kitchen drawer, and then she just empties the bag. So it was really strange for me, because I'm not used to doing that, but I can see how, that's how it's going to look over here as well. But we'll also have a lot of bi-weekly town halls and making sure that we're accessible. I mean, I will be doing quarterly presentations pretty much for the life of the contract, explaining what can go in each cart, how the program works, how to, solve some challenges that maybe residents face with either odors or, space, or anything like that. Same with the multifamilies, because this also applies to apartment complex tenants as well. And I understand that's going to be a really hard challenge for many people as far as, finding, centralized locations as far as the access, and also making sure there's space, because a lot of enclosures only have so much space for their waste bins. So making sure we can find space for that organics container. Really, the solution that we have is, luckily, there's not as many multifamily properties in Mission Viejo as other cities. So we really can do a property by property approach as far as meeting with them early on, going through the site, making a plan, right sizing, like let's look at their waste stream, let's see, can you reduce, your trash service or this much, and we can make more room for organic service here, and really finding a plan that's customizable to them. And just having access to free technical assistance and resources is really what's going to help get these multifamilies in compliance, and making sure that they have a successful program. So I know that was a lot, and I apologize. It was kind of just a vomit list of all the laws that we have today. But I'm happy to take any questions or comments, and even if you think of it later, I can provide my contact information as well for the chamber.
What we're going to do is, if people have questions, if you go to the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen and write your question, we'll have Michael Leonard read those questions for you. So Michael, or do we have any questions at this time?
There are no questions at this time.
This is Candace from Senator Bates's office. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry I didn't get it into the question and answer area, but we've had several calls from individuals wanting to know where they can take their cans and plastic bottles, and they're, obviously complaining that they're getting charged for them at the where they purchase them, but they'd like to know, because they're conscious and they perhaps don't live in an area where they have the bulk recycling. Where can they take these, since those centers closed down last year?
That's a good question. So unfortunately, with the centers closing down, it really does limit the options before, but there are still a few CRV centers that are open. Cal Recycle's website itself has a list. If you go to their, even just Google, where can I recycle bottles and cans? Cal Recycle's website pops up, and you're able to look at all the locations that are open.
Okay.
Even for Orange County, like I said, Waste Management has their CRV center. That's one that I know very well because I work at that office. And then even Mission Viejo, we have that one Crown Valley center. But we also, I know grocery stores are expected to also take them in and provide the CRV value back if there is not a CRV center nearby. I think within a mile radius. I have to double check on that number. I know right now, because of the COVID-19 dilemma, I think that the grocery stores have been waived from having to do that at this moment. But as soon as those measures are taken out of effect, I believe that they will be expected to do that again.
Okay, well, thank you.
Of course, thank you for your question.
Thank you. Ashley, we've had a request for your contact information. Would you mind sharing that?
Absolutely. I should have put it on the screen. I realize that now, but I can also, I'll give it right now. So for anyone who has a pen and paper, my email is A as in, Ashley, B as in boy, R, U, N as in Nancy, I, E as in elephant, R at WM as in wastemanagement.com. And I will also provide it to you, Dave, just so you can have it on the Mission Viejo Chamber of Commerce website. So if anyone wants to look at your directory, that information is there as well.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. Looks like we have a few more questions now. So Michael, it's up to you.
Sure. Ashley, Valerie asks, where can she take plastic bags to be recycled?
Well, that's a really good question, actually. plastic bags has been an interesting commodity because I know there is a lot of special plastic bag recycling, but as far as, with the haulers, I've looked at a lot of different haulers across the nation. It's a challenge to recycle plastic bags because of that MRF that you saw, in the sense of you see all these conveyor belts and these rotary blades going across. These bags have a tendency to get stuck in the conveyor belt or in those blades, and they basically get shredded to pieces and they kind of stop the whole line. So the recovery process of recycling bags is not as good when it goes to a MRF. I really do recommend sending them to grocery stores. I don't know, Targets, I remember they used to have those bins in the front where you could put plastic bags. There's a few select stores that still do this, and you can put the plastic bags in the front container, and they have a special recycling process for this commodity specifically, so that it doesn't get stuck, and so that the recovery process is much higher than if you sent it to a MRF through your residential program. But anytime I can recommend putting in, reducing the plastic bag usage, that's really the ultimate, most environmentally friendly way. If you can place your plastics loosely in the container, avoid using or use reusable bags instead of plastic bags. I know it's hard sometimes, but if you can, that's kind of the goal.
Well, thank you for answering that. We have another question from Don. He says, in my apartment complex, I have seen things like bricks, wood, styrofoam regularly in the recycle bin. I don't know if my neighbors are just ignorant of the system or just don't care. I appreciate your education efforts. Do you have any programs to encourage citizens to care?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for bringing that up, because I know we have a lot of avid recyclers out here in the city, and I've gotten a lot of calls about my neighbor keeps putting this in the bin and we keep getting notices about contamination, and I'm trying my hardest to make sure. And it really does take a massive education effort to get people to understand, because it's really hard. A lot of people believe, for example, styrofoam is recyclable, and it's not a recyclable commodity. It's not recyclable, and it also does not break down in the landfill very well either. So it's around for a while. We do have the programs as far as the Recycle Often, Recycle Right education program. This is also an online tool that anyone can access at any time. If you just look up Recycle Often, Recycle Right waste management, there's tons of resources as far as flyers. What can you put in your recycle bin? What can you not? Here's some labels to put on your containers for if you have a business, for on your business containers, and also for your home, and also for schools too, because I know a lot of schools have programs. So, in addition to having the in-person access, I'm always willing to go to an apartment complex or, to an event that maybe your community is hosting and provide more education on that.
Thank you. Very great information. There are no more questions, Dave, so I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Great program, very informative. So thank you very much. Next month, folks, we're going to have a program dealing with the reopening of the city and the community due to COVID-19. We're still finalizing our speakers for that, and we'll have more information on that very soon. At this point, we want to give some updates as to what's going on legislatively. So I'd like to start with Rhonda and Candace from Senator Pat Bates' office. Rhonda, are you on? I think you're muted.
Thank you. I did it right this time. Oh, stop laughing, Dave Everett. Okay, Candace and I are sharing responsibilities today. I am going to give you a little bit of an update on the budget, and then one of Senator Bates's bills that lead into a Prop 13, and talk a little bit about the ballot initiatives that are eligible for the November ballot. So as far as the budget is concerned, it looks like the Senate and the Assembly have already come up with 4 bills. They will be voted on Monday and then go to the governor. And hopefully all of this activity will meet the June 15th deadline, which is Monday, to make sure that they adhere to the Constitution. So don't have any details on what reductions have been agreed to in the budget or ads, but we'll probably find that out next week. Last time, I think I talked about 1319. Senator Bates has had this bill. She's been actually bringing it forward a couple of times, but it was really to correct an outdated interpretation of quote unquote property change of ownership. And it was regarding commercial property in Prop 13. Passage of this bill, of her bill, would have generated about $269 million in tax revenue immediately, like soon this year, without raising any taxes. Unfortunately, that bill was not passed, and in Senator Bates's words, this is yet another case of politics prevailing over common sense. And the main reason that it was not passed, quite honestly, is because there are people in Sacramento that want to actually change Prop 13. They don't want to correct it. They don't want to make it look better. They don't want to make it be better. They want to just change it completely. So that's what I want to talk to you next. On the November ballot, there are two initiatives that are going to be eligible for the November ballot. Now, whether they both get on there, they decide, I'm not sure. But my concern is this. Ballot Initiative 1851, 1851, and Ballot Initiative 1870. These are not laws. These are not bills. They're not legislation. These are the type of things that you sign a petition outside Trader Joe's or wherever, and they gathered enough signatures and they went through the process that these two now are eligible for the November ballot. I'm going to read the language, the preliminary language on both of them so you know what I'm talking about. 1851 requires certain commercial and industrial real property to be taxed based on fair market value. It dedicates portion of any increased revenue to education and local services. Initiative is a constitutional amendment. Now, did anybody hear the words Prop 13 in there or split roll? No. There's a reason for that. The next one is 1870, and I'm going to read the language on this one so far. Increases funding for public schools, community colleges, and local government services by changing tax assessment of commercial and industrial property. And that too will be a constitutional amendment. Did anyone here split roll or Prop 13? No. So the bottom line is that these two have been made eligible. The first one I said was the summary date on it was in 2018. The summary date on the second one was 2019, but both of them are eligible. So I will be continuing to talk about these in the forthcoming chamber meetings because we need to know what's happening. What is the strategy behind these two initiatives being eligible and what's going on so that we are not caught off guard like we were with the gas tax repeal initiative that most people wanted to repeal the gas tax, but because of the wording on the ballot, they weren't able to figure that out. So that's all that I have to share at this point. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask them and we'll deal with it after that. Candace, take it over.
Good morning. Sergio, I saw you waving your arm. You got in the dark like I was. Anyway, sometimes energy saving things can be not so much fun. Anyway, I wanted to bring you up to date on the passage and actually of a agreement that was made between several stakeholders in South Orange County to protect the emergency preparedness at San Onofre nuclear plant. In 2019, Senator Bates introduced an authored AB 465, which made it clear that local governments would continue to receive funding for costs incurred as a result of carrying out activities that ensured the safety and welfare of the communities surrounding songs. The full Senate and the Assembly Government Organization Committee both unanimously passed SB 465. Well, in discussions with the stakeholders, Senator Bates agreed to hold her bill. She pulled it back to see if perhaps a voluntary agreement could be reached and ratified, which did occur just less than 10 days ago. The agreement provides that the 5 local jurisdictions will receive more than $12.6 million for 8 years of deconstruction of songs, and which is through 2029, and more than 9.9 million annually for a 20-year period going through 2049, which at the same time would have potentially all of the nuclear waste removed from songs. We're very lucky to have Edison required to pay for this. They agreed to do this in a joint group that included our local cities and stakeholders. So it was through negotiations with Senator Bates's staff, who worked on this for a year and a half to get this done, that we can now feel safe and secure and know that we have the funds to incorporate what we need for safety in our area since we have this nuclear power plant there. So I want you to know that because of Senator Bates, we were able to accomplish this without it having to go through the full legislature. It's much better if you can get the stakeholders to agree. This is now an agreement that's put in stone until 2049, and it has been ratified. So that's pretty much my update for today. And let's hope that we can get some good government going up in Sacramento and see where the money is going to be spent. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have representation from Assemblymember Bill Bro's office. So,
hello, good government in Sacramento. Boy, that's high hopes. That's well, thanks for a minute. I'll just want to give a quick update on the state budget process. As many of you are aware, Monday is the deadline for the state budget, the 15th. So everybody's in budget committees and subcommittees talking about how do we deal with the $53 billion deficit because of the coronavirus shutdown, which we're all kind of looking at each other going, was that necessary or not? I'm sure on some levels, at least I know we're hearing from a lot of small businesses asking that question. But a lot of what they did to cover up the $53 billion is to raid all the rainy day funds. And on some level, that seems appropriate. I mean, if you're not saving in a rainy day fund for a pandemic, then, you know, what are you saving for? So that makes some sense. But what the Republican caucus is saying up there, and I think Assemblyman Bro is echoing this a lot, is, you know, this economic slowdown is not just going to be 1 year, and they're making 1 year budget decisions on this. And so basically they're just kicking the can down till next year, and there's going to be this huge budget deficit next year as well. But and they're kind of pretending the economy is going to come back a little bit stronger than I think is realistic. And I think that's one of the reasons Republicans are saying, hey, do we need to have this much spending attached to a $52 billion deficit as well? So, well, a couple of the things that are in the budget that I thought were worth mentioning is that the AB5, which is hitting a lot of these small businesses and independent contractors, there's money in the budget, $17.5 million, and to enforce AB5, which, you know, in the middle of an economy that's as bad as the Great Depression, or the worst since the Great Depression, you know, maybe that's something that isn't a priority right now. And I think that's one of the things Assemblyman Bro looks at the budget and says, you know, I don't know if that's great spending there. They've hired 103 new positions to enforce AB5. So if you're a hairstylist, imagine the year you're having where you're shut down, and then also you're reclassifying everyone, which ends up being like 11-12% tax. The other tax that we're keeping a close eye on, and taxes go through the legislature all the time, unfortunately. But this one's odd because they're basically giving your authority to tax people to the Air Resources Board. And it's part of the cap and trade program that basically taxes businesses for emission credits. But, again, in this kind of economy, do we really want a $25 million tax on our businesses on top of everything else that's going on? So we'll be keeping an eye on the budget. And if you are a constituency that doesn't want your budget cut, let your legislators know now, because there's going to definitely be some tough cuts in the next couple of days.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, from Congress member Katie Porter's office, we have Cody.
Morning. Just a couple updates I've got today. So on May 15th, the House passed the HEROES Act. The highlight of that bill was really the local funds that would be sent out in response to the coronavirus pandemic. We are, of course, awaiting a version of that bill or another bill from the Senate. And the Congresswoman's main hope there is that the local funds remain in the next relief bill. Congresswoman also voted on a bill that amended the PPP, which is a Paycheck Protection Program, which is now law. There are two really important takeaways from that bill that I think small business owners should know. Previously, it was required that 75% of the funds were allocated to payroll. This latest bill changed that to 60%. So now business owners have some more flexibility in what they can use those funds for, and able to have them to be able to have those loans forgiven. Also, the previous period to spend the funds was 8 weeks. A lot of folks were running into issues in that their businesses weren't open yet, so they weren't able to spend the funds. That has been extended to 24 weeks. Application period ends on June 30th. I know we've got some great community lenders in Orange County that are still accepting applications for the PPP. And then let's see, other than that, our district office is working just to help folks with federal agencies. That includes the IRS for economic impact payments and the SBA for status inquiries on EIDL loans. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Appreciate it, Cody. Thank you very much. At the county level, the county's been doing a great job of working with the governor's office to try and get businesses reopened. And we'll turn it over to Sergio from Lisa Bartlett's office. You're muted still.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Did you get the information about today's webinar on the CARES Act funding?
I did not.
So we sent it to all the chambers of commerce. Is Doug Velasco on?
Yes.
Doug, did you get it? Anyway, we sent it to all the chambers of commerce. We heard back from all of them except yours. But that being said, there is a webinar today because 501c6s are eligible to receive grant funding. So we highly encourage you and your chamber to participate in today's noon webinar. Do you get the supervisor's newsletter?
I don't. Doug probably does.
Oh. Well, if you don't get the supervisor's newsletter, if you want to send me your email address, I'll be happy to sign you up. All the information's on there. It goes out at least every Friday, sometimes during the week too.
Great.
But yeah, so if you send me, if anyone wants to send me your email address, I will forward you the link for today's webinar on that funding and how to apply.
All right.
And for those of you who do not have my email address, it's Sergio, SERGIO .prince, PRINCE @ ocgov.org. ocgov.com. Yeah, if you send me an email, I'll send you the link for that webinar. And then the city should have that information as well. I know that the supervisor spoke directly with all the mayors and city managers as well. And that's at noon today. And then
Okay.
if you're not webinared out, we have another one at 1 o'clock, and that is for churches and their reopening procedures. In fact, my church that I attend is in Mission Viejo. It's the oldest church in Mission Viejo, and the senior pastor, Pastor John Stewart of Mount of Olives Church, was actually one of the signatories to the letter that Supervisor Bartlett sent to the governor as president of CSAC. So we're excited about churches reopening. So if any of you are attend a church or a house of worship and you would like your faith-based leaders to be part of this webinar, that's at 1 o'clock today. And again, if you want to send me an email, I will send you the link to register for that church reopening webinar. Chamber ribbon cuttings. I just participated in my first virtual chamber ribbon cutting with the Laguna Beach Chamber, and it went remarkably well. Wasn't sure how it was going to go, but it went remarkably well. If you guys are considering something like that, I would encourage you to touch base with their executive director, Paula Arnold Hornbuckle, and she could explain how they did it. It went really well. Obviously, mask, face coverings are a big issue in Orange County, and initially we were getting a lot of comments from people who didn't like it. Now we're getting lots of comments from people who think it needs to be more enforced. So it's a kind of a damned if you do and a damned if you don't situation. But we've had some issues here at the county. As you may have heard, our county medical health officer resigned this week, and we have she's been replaced with the Orange County head of healthcare agency, Dr. Clayton Shaw. But it's a tough situation. Nicole Quick, the previous health officer, at the encouragement of a certain supervisor who encouraged people to protest in front of her house, had her life threatened, and so she resigned, understandably so. So it's a thankless job, and it's a challenging situation here at the county. Also, there have been a number of protests, and I was pleased to see the protests in Mission Viejo. That was peaceful protests. I saw the photos, and a lot of Mission Viejo residents, hundreds of Mission Viejo residents out in force in support of the Black Lives Matters, and also in support of our law enforcement personnel who have a very challenging job as well. Supervisor Bartlett has been getting asked a lot lately where she stands on the issue of racial prejudice and social injustice. And this week, the Board of Supervisors passed a resolution in support of law enforcement and in opposition to social injustice and supporting the Black Lives Movement. Many of you know Supervisor Bartlett is of Japanese descent, Japanese American descent, and so she empathizes with the issue very personally. Her family was moved to relocation camps during World War II for being of Japanese descent, and over the decades, they, being Asian American, she has heard the ethnic jokes and slurs towards Asian Americans, especially these days, a number of hate crimes being committed against Asian Americans in Orange County because of the coronavirus that originated in China. So anyways, the board empathizes, and Supervisor Bartlett empathizes, and she'll be making a statement in her newsletter today about that. And then lastly, Candace covered very well the item about the San Onofre nuclear generating station. Supervisor Bartlett has a statement in her newsletter, which I'll just read a portion of since Candace covered it very well. Very appreciative of Senator Bates' efforts. And Supervisor Bartlett, after many months of negotiation, last week, she and her board colleagues approved an agreement with SONGS, Sheriff's Department, the counties of Orange and San Diego, the cities of San Clemente, San Juan, and Dana Point, to receive funding for nuclear emergency preparedness in response to anything at Songs. And she's very grateful for the cooperation between the signatories and SCE, especially Sheriff Barnes and Donna Boston of the Sheriff's Department. Very thankful for everyone's efforts. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Sergio. Appreciate it. And last, we want to get an update in the city of Mission Viejo from Larry Longenecker.
Hi, thanks everybody, and good morning. Just a couple quick updates. We have some city facilities that are starting to reopen. The city library has commenced with a curbside pickup service, and you can place a hold and you get notified in a day or two, and you can drive by and pick up your item. Currently, the hours are Monday through Friday from noon to 4, and there's no contact at all. The staff wears masks and gloves, and they'll deliver your item to your trunk or the back seat of your car. And then you can drop off items in a couple of bins that are located in the City Hall parking lot. Kind of a fun fact, there are more than 173,000 items in the library available to check out. And so that keep you busy for a little while here. The city is also gearing up to reopen its pool facilities as early as tomorrow. We're just waiting for final approval from the county. Lap swimming only will be allowed, and reservations will be required. All recreation center members will get an email with the hours at each facility and also instructions on how to make reservations. And I'm sure, as most folks on this call are aware, the governor has announced additional business sectors that are going to be allowed to reopen starting tomorrow. They include movie theaters, family entertainment, bars, gyms and fitness centers, hotels, and outdoor recreation. Of course, all according to state and county guidelines, but we're very excited to see more businesses be allowed to open up and get going again. And then lastly, with regard to new development in Mission Viejo, we have a TrueMark residential proposal that's going to our Planning and Transportation Commission on July 13th for a public hearing. This is a 91 unit condominium project proposed on about 7 acres that is currently zoned open space. And that site is located on El Toro Road between Marguerite Parkway and the 241 toll road. I'll put my contact information in the chat, and if you have questions on any of this, feel free to give me a call. Thanks.
Appreciate it, Larry. Thank you. And last but not least, we have our Chamber CEO, Doug Zalasko.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I wanted to announce something very, very special that happened last week from the standpoint of the Chamber. We had several people step up and donate dollars to the Mission Viejo Hospital workers. There were 1,200 that were fed lunch, and another 500 were fed dessert that evening. So a total of 1,700 people we took care of there, and we donated, as far as the Chamber is concerned, $2,000. I think we actually came up with about $12,000 in total. So very, very pleased at that. And considering all the challenges that the business owners have had here, excuse me, in the last 3 or 4 months, I think that was just phenomenal. And I'm very, very appreciative of all those people that contributed. And I know the hospital personnel are very pleased with that as well. One other item that I wanted to mention, actually 2 things. We continue to Zoom our way to keeping members engaged as much as possible. We have our Tuesday morning Daybreakers event. We have the legislative communication event as we're in today. We do have lunch and learns every month, and we're also doing happy hours, which is more of a relaxed atmosphere, but it enables everybody to get together and put their hair down a little bit and enjoy one another's company. One last item I want to mention is I'm looking to meet with the city and with Larry to talk a little bit about the potential of collaborating again for our 4th annual restaurant week. Maybe there is some possibility that we can still pull that off considering social distancing. And then last but not least is our mayor's roundtable, which usually consists of about 25 people, which is maybe feasible to pull that one off yet in this calendar year. Some of the larger events that we have may be still in question and doubtful, but at least these two events we might be able to pull these off. So we look forward to working with the city on those items. And I think that is it, David.
All right, thank you, Doug.
Sure.
Again, just a reminder that next month we're going to have a program dealing with the reopening of businesses. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions, and that will be on the second Thursday of July. So all of you have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.